Bro, Hinata was always the right option, but anyway, you play like my grandma.
Man, you play like your grandma.
Man, you play like my Who are you?
I'm Gabe Newell.
Do you play like his grandma?
No. Being a really good player is a super valuable thing.
In an interview with Gabe Newell, the CEO of Valve, and Robin Walker, one of the OG designers from the company, Gabe was asked if he thinks about the impact of Valve Corp and the way they've shaped the gaming industry as a whole, and Gabe responded saying that he thinks about the failure of Artifact, a card game that they released in late 2018, and talks about how Valve can improve by learning from their disappointments.
Do you ever take a minute to kind of think back and look at the impact that Valve has had, this company that you co-founded has had on the entire industry?
That's really not how we think. We're always concerned about what we need to do next and how we're evolving and what are the new challenges. So I'll spend time like thinking about Artifact and why Artifact ended up being a disappointment. And that's actually way more useful than thinking about the impact we had on the industry.
Honesty like this, especially in the gaming industry, is really hard to find. And it's a great example of how Valve operates by putting the player first and letting them decide what is fun. Valve games are sleek, they're responsive, and don't hold your hand whatsoever. Every time you play a Valve game, there's a certain feeling to it, a sharp, instantaneous design that's so simple yet addicting. Valve is a company built by mathematical geniuses, who are also longtime gaming fans, and the games they've made have remained perfectly playable even after 20 years. Valve is an extremely unique company, and there are even more unique building blocks that have shaped their signature design philosophy. And to understand the secret recipe to what makes Valve games so blessed, we first need to understand Quake. In 1996, ID Software, the godfather of first-person shooters on PC, released Quake. And while it has many similarities to other first-person shooters released around the same time, it stood out mainly because it was fully 3D, and thanks to Quake's famous PVS rendering technique, it ran on most computers just fine. Clearly, Half-Life takes inspiration from Quake, as it's a classic first-person shooter, but the main reason why Half-Life is often associated with Quake is because shortly after Valve started as a company, thanks to connections with people at ID Software, they got licensing for the Quake engine and began modifying it for their own standalone shooter. Everything that made Quake good in 1996 is a lot of what makes Valve games good today. Quake got you straight into the action, and the effects that different guns had on enemies made the levels feel interactive and gave you a sense of real power. The game never stops you from moving, and the multiplayer was just as fast as the base game and was fully moddable, which gave Quake a significant leverage of spice over other shooters released around the same time. Sound familiar? Valve turned the Quake engine into their very own gold source engine, and it contained a few distinct differences from the foundation they started with. After all, Gabe Newell himself said that by the end of Half-Life's development, 75% of the engine's code was written by Valve. The way that artificial intelligence worked in the modified Quake engine was programmed entirely by Valve employees. The engine also supported skeletal animations, giving Valve the opportunity to make semi-realistic character movement a possibility. Quake's engine and the acquisition of Worldcraft allowed Valve to skip a lot of the foundational building of Half-Life and focus their magic on the physics, gameplay, and world. In a way, Half-Life is kind of an extreme overachieving mod, which makes sense because a lot of the initial hires for Half-Life's development team had a background of being modders. Half-Life was created by a blend of industry professionals and nobodies with very specific talents which were explored to the fullest in Half-Life's development. Some of Valve's interesting and unique characters include Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington, both being former Microsoft employees who left with the idea of starting a game company. Mike Harrington left Valve after the release of Half-Life, but Gabe Newell is still the CEO of the company. Gabe's vision on how video games should be designed is one of the largest factors to what gives Valve games their responsive reputation. You'd have these conversations where you'd be sitting in a design review and somebody would say that's not realistic, and you're like, okay, what does that have? Like, explain to me why that's interesting, because in the real world, I have to write up lists of stuff, I have to go to the grocery store to buy it, and I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun. The projects that Gabe overlooks excel because they embrace themselves as video games and aim to thrive within that self-awareness. That said, I think excessive realism is fun in video games, but as a broad topic, this approach clearly gives Valve an upper hand from a gameplay perspective. Gabe will tell people to contact him via email frequently over his games and interviews to tell him what they think.
And please, let me know what you think. You can reach me at gaben@valvesoftware.com. Thanks. And have fun.
Which on a very meta level is a great example of Valve's love for player choice, because he takes their thoughts and opinions into consideration when thinking up future projects with his team. Robin Walker got hired by Valve because he made the Team Fortress mod for Quake, which Valve acquired after the release of Half-Life so that it could be made in Half-Life's engine. In an interview, he claimed Valve purposely seeks out mod and indie game developers because those are the people who already have an interest in game design. So giving somebody with talent who wants to make an impact on the industry an opportunity to work on a big big game with a big budget is a win for all parties involved. Robin Walker has gone on to be one of the major contributors for Half-Life Alyx. A lot of the design choices that went to that game were because of Robin. Mark Laidlaw was an experienced science fiction writer who joined Valve in 1997. Because the game was a bit of a jumbled mess at the time, with the levels being disconnected and the game being a mildly formulaic tech demo, Mark Laidlaw helped form the story of Half-Life along with the other members on the team by bringing old storytelling tricks to the project. Because the story was written by a handful of different developers, Half-Life was both unpredictable but structured in a way that could be understood and gripping.
For God's sake, open the silo door! They're coming for us! It's our only way out! Oh my God, we're doomed!
John Guthrie joined Valve when he was only 23 years old. He was a young college student that's main experience came from modding Quake. He not only designed one of the most iconic levels in video game history, but also created Half-Life's disastrous opening sequence after working 48 hours straight to get it done. Obviously, Valve is home to tons of talented individuals, all with their own stories, but every single one of them radiates something important for gaming. Passion to make something new. And sure, we got the but we also got the and something that they've always emphasized from the very beginning is giving the player a certain amount of control. What I'm trying to say is Valve hires a lot of intelligent people who bring something super unique to the table. And that collection of talent all working together, all in complete control of what they think will be good for Valve's future project, translates well into the stuff Valve puts out because they put that focus on individual control in their game design. It's no wonder Valve made a mod manager for Steam so that their games could be modded faster and easier. They love creativity.
10 times as much content comes from the user base for TF2 as comes from us. So we think that we're super productive and kind of badass at making TF2 content, but even at this early stage, we cannot compete with our own customers in the production of content for this environment. So the only company we've ever met that kind of kicks our ass is our customers, right? We'll go up against Bungie or Blizzard or anybody, but we won't try to compete with our own user base because we already know that we're going to lose.
Half-Life 2's second half of the Highway 17 chapter brilliantly highlights the magic of player choice in video games. In this area, Gordon is supposed to cross this bridge by parkouring on the beams holding it up. It is completely up to you how you want to navigate this area. You can parkour and try to rush it with quick thinking jump coordination, or you can take it slow and carefully move to the other side. There are multiple ways to access each area, and as long as you get from one side to the other, Valve could care less about how you do it. The spice in this level comes in once you need to get back where a hunter chopper starts firing at you. And once again, you're in control of how you execute this situation. The bridge is your oyster. And you can move to anywhere you want as long as you destroy the chopper at the end. Sure, it's not realistic that you can just b-hop from beam to beam, but as Gabe intended, it's definitely fun. Video games are fun because, to put it in short terms, whenever we impact something or progress, our brains shoot dopamine, the happy transmitters, into our body, which feeds our natural human desire to accomplish. It's no coincidence that a lot of the most played games of all time are the ones where the developers let the player get creative. The goal of a well-designed game is to keep the player engaged with a virtual sense of accomplishment, which is why Valve's player interest-oriented design philosophy for everything works so well. A surface-level example of this is how Valve games don't have cutscenes. If something is being explained to you, like dialogue in a cutscene or a lecture in a classroom, you might want to fidget or doodle to multitask while taking in information, which has actually been shown to benefit memory and focus for some people. So Valve being self-aware that most players don't want to sit through a cutscene and would rather keep moving is a genius approach because it allows the story-hungry players to stand still and take it in as they please, and the fast, quick-moving gamers to fidget to their heart's content. And both outcomes work well because the gamer that doesn't focus as much probably took in more information than they would have if the information was forced on them through an uninteractive cutscene. I mean, I'm not the only one that probably has no recollection whatsoever what the owl in Ocarina of Time had to say, right? Counter-Strike is one of the most consistently played games of all time, averaging over 1.1 million players every single day. Everybody and their cat knows it was originally a mod for Half-Life, but its origins as a gold source game only benefited its competitive nature, as a lot of the things that made Half-Life great back in 1998 are the same things that make Counter-Strike so fluent today. Like Half-Life, Counter-Strike uses hit scan for its weapons, meaning when you fire them, there's no projectile shot from the barrel, and the game decides whether you hit an enemy or not based on where their hitbox was when you shot. Hit scan combined with learning how to strategically fire each weapon to avoid crazy recoil adds a satisfying punch to hitting headshots, but also means that the player's skill and general Counter-Strike gun knowledge decides whether you live or die. In Half-Life, there's no sprint, ability buffs, or aiming down sights. The movement is very grounded, so to get around and outsmart enemies in Counter-Strike, you need to work around the limited movement to get an angle on your enemies. And the hardcore nature of Counter-Strike's simple but quick movement is a lot of what makes it easy to learn, but very hard to master. Sure, CS2 is built by mechanics that are older than most of the people watching this video, but Valve doesn't change things that don't need to be changed. Valve respects most of their player base, and it shows with how they immortalize esports moments in their maps and cosmetics, but also how they don't cave to the ever-growing trend of live service where you consistently change your game's formula in favor of growing a bigger audience. There's a reason why Valve makes minor adjustments to the game and not major left turns for the franchise, because the destination was made 25 years ago, and with a clear love for the community they've built over those years, they know the best thing to do is just leave it as it is. So let's break it down for a second. Gabe Newell drops his email all the time because he believes in player choice, impact, and control, and he takes in their opinions to shape whatever the next project is that Valve works on. Valve purposely hires a lot of modders since those are the people that have always valued game development, and of course, reshaping something as their own. Valve's games give you a significant amount of freedom within their linear environments. You can save whenever you want, you can miss out on cinematic moments if you aren't focused, you can throw the weighted storage cube right over the edge if you feel like it, and the physics engine will respond to how hard you fling it. Everything this company puts out is built to respond to the person in front of the screen. There's a tremendous amount of freedom, and to elaborate on what I was talking about earlier, it's probably because Valve has a big interest in exploring person-to-person creativity within the corporation itself. I've spoken on this before in another video, but Valve as a company is super unique in how they operate. Gabe owns 50% of the company, but everybody else owns the rest through stocks. And because there is a no management policy, people are entrusted to be their own managers when they work on a project. The way that something gets started at Valve is somebody has an idea and some other people jump on board. There are of course pros and cons to this system. Because project management is relatively loose, a lot of stuff gets canned at Valve. I mean, a lot. A Half-Life 3 build that was in development from 2013 to 2014 that would feature procedurally generated levels between handcrafted story-driven ones. Left 4 Dead 3 was supposed to be open world. Hot Dog, it was supposed to be another Left 4 Dead type game, but it got canned. RPG, which was an RPG inspired by Dark Souls, Monster Hunter, and the Elder Scrolls series, and of course many more. But the plus side to this employee-driven environment at Valve is that everybody can use their talent to shape a project beyond anything one writer could coordinate. If you think that the level can be deeper in some way, you have as much of a voice as anybody else on the team, so you can say, hey, I want this level to be more physics driven, and then majority rule, most of the time, decides if it's a good idea or not. Another bonus to this emphasis on individual control at Valve is that while the company doesn't make a lot of major video game projects, whenever they do make one, it's usually really good, since people who are passionate about video games are the ones that critique one another's puzzle pieces they slap onto the table, which helps everyone improve, and of course makes the overall project even better. VR, for example, is a mess, and especially before 2020, it was nuts how unimmersive a lot of VR titles were. You guys remember how in LA Noire, the default movement control was to sway your hands back and forth? In Skyrim, the controller would just hang out sometimes and nothing was interactive? Yes, those examples were ports, and yes, a lot of smaller titles already existed that took advantage of the benefits that VR could bring to indie projects, but a big budget, innovative VR adventure experience was just too big of an idea for anybody to make at the time. Starting in 2016, once the Source 2 engine was advanced enough to make a finished project, they acquired the indie studio behind Firewatch, and with their help began development on Half-Life Alyx, which was a good way for the team to work on a Half-Life project without it having the daunting pressure that comes with it being the third. Throughout production, the main focus that Valve had with Half-Life Alyx was always designing everything around it being a VR game. Now some of you might be thinking, Justin, please kill yourself. Obviously it's a VR game, it's going to be designed to work with virtual reality, but what I mean by this is there are specific mechanics like cupping your hand over your mouth to hold your breath and storing loot over your shoulder that push the immersion factor beyond what most VR titles were doing at the time, by subverting what would usually just be an action done with the press of a button. It's so cool. So yeah, Half-Life Alyx is a very interactive game that kisses your strategies on the lips. You can break windows and interact with the shards individually. When you hover your hand over these barnacle fucking things, they start tweaking out at you. You can physically pull yourself up ladders. You can feel the needles triggers and your controller vibration when you heal. It's a whole other level. When Valve made Half-Life Alyx, they designed it with the goal of it being accessible to everybody, going as far as to make the whole game playable with only one controller. And I knew a guy who played through the whole game while only having a 1050 Ti. Alyx's floating hands aren't realistic, but they're certainly more immersive than a full virtual body that tweaks out whenever you move in an unconventional direction. The gravity gloves aren't realistic, but they make the environments 10 times more fun to explore because it means you don't have to bend down and grab something every time you need to snag an item. But realism is still incorporated for difficulty's sake, like how if you throw away a half-used magazine, the bullets inside of it leave your inventory too, unlike most games where you can shoot one bullet, reload, and magically gain the rest of the bullets back from the previous magazine. This video was sponsored by my roommate's cat. Thank you for giving me the mental strength to push out another video while succumbing to the stress of summer ending and university starting. If you enjoyed this video, you can thank the Goobmeister because without her, I would be in an asylum. This whole essay probably seems like a bit of a mess, but there is a clear connection. Valve's flawless design philosophy is their idea of maximum creative and player convenience. Their games are incredibly optimized. Even CS2, which got a serious graphical upgrade from Global Offensive, runs like a dream on most systems. Steam is completely free, and despite having the largest customer count on any digital video game market, its service is famously known to be some of the best out there. On August 24th, 2024, Steam suffered one of the biggest and most coordinated DDoS attacks in history, which attacked 107 Steam server IPs, yet nobody even knew it happened because Steam's infrastructure is so good. Even though Valve takes all the time in the world because they truly want to outdo themselves by knowing all there is to know before diving into a new project, whenever they release something, you know it's going to be pretty fucking cool. This method of designing projects is something that could only happen in a private company. With Rockstar, for example, being owned under Take-Two Interactive, there is constant pressure to make a big number for the quarterly earnings. If they spend too much time working on one thing without monetizing everything else, their parent company Take-Two is going to beat them. But with that pressure comes more slip-ups, more disconnect, and more resources poured into something that could be better used on the main pizza. The Costco chicken versus the Popeyes 6-piece signature hot combo. And as somebody that's replayed Half-Life Alyx a bajillion times, quality over quantity. But you know what? F my opinion. What do you guys think about all this? Why do you think Valve's games are so good or bad? Let me know in the comments below and I'll check them out as soon as I possibly can. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video and make sure to have a good one.